Hello and welcome to New Frontiers on CCTV International. I'm Ji Xiangjun in Beijing. And today we'll continue the fascinating story of one of the most famous forms of traditional opera in China, Kunqu opera. The popularity of Kunqu opera historically has a lot to do with the support it received from the imperial court from the time of Emperor Kangxi onwards. In 1684, Emperor Kangxi undertook his first inspection tour of the south. At one point, he is said to have postponed an outing so that he could spend more time watching an opera performance. It seemed that the beautiful landscape of southern China was less of an attraction than Kunqu opera.
In the several hundred years after it was built during the reign of Emperor Zhengde of the Ming dynasty, Zhuojiang Garden in Suzhou changed hands many times. By the time of Emperor Kangxi of the Qing dynasty, the garden had become the property of the emperor. And so when he came to Suzhou on an inspection tour in 1684, the 23rd year of his reign, he used the garden as his temporary residence. Li Nian Lu, the Chronicle, was written by an early Qing literary man by the name of Yao Tinglin. On the afternoon of the 26th of the 12th month of that year, Emperor Kangxi arrived at his garden, and after sitting in it for a while, he hastened to the family of Qi Guoqian, the official in charge of Suzhou's silk trade. As soon as he had taken a seat in Qi's house, he asked the latter if there was perchance any opera ready to be performed, and of course the answer was yes. Qi saw it as his duty to please the emperor by having some opera ready, and after dinner the emperor spent the entire evening enjoying some 20 or so opera highlights. As a great fan of Kunqu, the opera knew these works like the back of his hand, and he personally chose each of the highlights he wished to see and hear performed. Today, Qi's former residence is number 10 Middle School in Suzhou Municipality. But during the time of Emperor Kangxi, Qi also worked here. One of his duties was to select the best Kunqu performers and send them to Nanfu, the department in charge of royal entertainment in Beijing. Nanfu was the government institute charged with the responsibility of providing opera entertainment for the royal family. According to historical records, during the reign of Kangxi, the institute had as many as several hundred performers, and in later years, the place where these performers lived was called Suzhou Lane. The inspection tour of 1684 was the emperor's first undertaken in the south. By that time, the economy of Suzhou had returned to normal after several years of recovery, and the city had risen to be an economic and cultural center of South China. To Emperor Kangxi, a man well versed in traditional culture, Suzhou was, without doubt, a place of great interest. Such was the emperor's love of Kunqu opera that he postponed an outing planned for the next morning so he could spend more time watching operatic performances. To him, compared with the world on stage, the beautiful landscapes of South China were less of an attraction. As mentioned, Emperor Kangxi was a huge fan of Kunqu, but so were many others. Officials, nobles, gentlemen residing in the countryside and people in the streets all loved Kunqu. Interestingly, both the emperor on the throne and the general populace of Suzhou city preferred opera highlights to complete operas.
"戏曲有一个特点，有些个观众他对于故事都很熟了，他不是在看由头到尾怎么发展故事怎么曲折，不是这样，他看表演，听他的唱。看他的表演，但是在这一折戏里头，就表演确实充分的有发挥，就是有他那个艺术魅力。年代久远了以后呢，就是有一些个折子戏就成为昆曲的这个主要的演出剧目了。
How did the performance of Kunqu evolve from the performance of a full-scale drama to performances of highlights? Why did highlights fascinate people to such a degree? And how did this approach to performing Kunqu come to win favor with the whole of society? Inside the Suzhou Kunqu Museum, we can see librettos by Qing Dynasty dramatist Li Yu. And they have titles like Destined for a Happy Marriage, The Kite's Era, and Flatfish. Unlike other dramatists, Li Yu ran a professional family Kunqu troupe.
他一个偶然的机会呢，认识了2个漂亮的女子，他就把她们成为那2个漂亮女子，一个姓乔，一个姓王，把她们这个成为自己的小老婆。而这2个人都特漂亮，而特会演戏，他就借这个机会呢，他就组织了一个戏班，在带戏其他的女子，他就让这个戏班呢，这个排了自己的戏，也排别人的戏。
was well versed in literary forms. He wrote poems and librettos, and he taught acting and dancing. His family troupe toured from place to place, and eventually it became a professional troupe rather than just a family one.
那么他在演出时候呢，他就要非常讲究了，怎么样把戏演的这个紧凑，怎么样这个既有悲剧又有喜剧，既有冷场又有日常，有文戏还有武打，对吧？这个怎么样化妆，那他都很有讲究。他留下了一部理论著作，就《闲情偶记》。
Li Yu's is the earliest documented professional Kunqu troupe. After Emperor Yongzheng ascended the throne, many new professional troupes were formed, a process that was facilitated by the emperor's order that his officials should give up their private Kunqu performance.
Emperor Yongzheng was quite unlike his predecessors in that the only thing he was concerned about was state power. Within a month of taking the throne, he instructed all his officials to give up the Kunqu performers they had at home. As a result, many actors and actresses were left in the streets to fend for themselves. Inevitably, more professional troupes were formed, and they began to perform for society at large. Common people now had the chance to learn about Kunqu.
那时候称为呢苏州城里的从事这个行业的有几千人，都去从事这个行业，因为这个穷人家的孩子无以为生，就把他送去学戏吧，学了戏可以唱，那时候唱戏很可以过好日子。
By this time, public theatres had begun to appear in big cities such as Beijing, Nanjing and Suzhou. In the book Xiao Xia Xianji, or Leisurely Notes in the Season of Summer, written by Suzhou scholar Gu Gongxie, the following is found. Guoyuan Theatre in Suzhou was established during the reign of Yongzheng, and by the reign of Qianlong, a dozen or more theatres could be seen in the streets, providing a livelihood for thousands of people. But while Kunqu audiences and venues were changing, script writing as a trade was on the decline. Every troupe was suffering from a shortage of good scripts. Unlike Kunqu performers retained by family troupes, those in theatres were under economic pressure. But, that said, they had greater room to display their talents and be creative. To meet the change of clientele, highlights were crafted, and these proved immensely popular. The National Library retains records on a number of attempts to popularize Kunqu among the common people several hundred years ago. Notes and Records is a Kunqu book printed in the 14th year of the reign of Daoguang, although it quite possibly appeared in its first edition somewhat earlier, probably in the reign of Qianlong. This book provides detailed descriptions of no less than 66 highlights, covering scripts, costumes and facial makeup. And on the margin of each page, beside the music notation and dialogue, are notes on acting technique and facial expression. Notes and Records, besides being a collection of Kunqu scripts, records the experiences of performers, both on stage and during rehearsals. The appearance of Kunqu highlights marked a peak in Kunqu, and credit for this should be ascribed to the people who pioneered this approach to popularizing the genre. After Kunqu became a theatrical form on stage, over time roles fell into certain categories, and this was reflected in both script writing and acting. By the time highlights appeared, there were 5 rigid categories into which all characters fell: the young male, young female, painted face role, comic role, and middle-aged male role. Under these 5, a further 20 subcategories evolved. The subcategories, known as jiamen, distinguish the roles by gender, age, social status, and personality, and they provide more leeway for performers to display their skills.
握了这些表演技能，那么史必之语他就掌握了怎么来塑造人物，塑造这一类人物的技能。所以作为一个折子戏，它既是培养演员的，也是考验演员的。
Each category had its own costumes and painted faces, and some even had standardized makeup patterns. In other words, a villain or a hero was identifiable by the pattern on his face.
The categorization of the characters led to the designs of the facial makeup being standardized. The use of standardized designs made it easier for audiences to understand the various roles.
The categories did not only apply to roles on stage, but also the standard procedures by which a drama was to be conducted.
遇见两位俊秀才俊，秀才。
The term standardization is highly important in Kunqu. On stage, a set of standard procedures determines everything: the singing, dancing, and postures.
程式化的东西，它一定是有它的道理的。就像我们看京剧、看昆曲，他把一个台后边放一张桌子，摆一张椅子，那好了，那你已经认为这是一个房子了，啊，他所有的表演呢，在这个区域里边，然后敲门的时候就对着空气敲2下。
Interestingly, it is the same with other moves, whether it be opening or closing a door, or mounting and dismounting a horse. All actions are standardized in symbolic moves. There are also standardized moves for expressing all manner of feelings, even those that one might consider very difficult to express.
棋去又棋来，皮门还没闭。哎呀，相公好，相公好，相公好。
表演的体系，表演的程式，唱念做表，是吧？舞台的那个结构的体系，一桌二椅，是吧？那穿的衣服的体系，是吧？穿什么衣服？唱念更不用说了，那些东西，它成了整个中国戏曲的一笔财富和一种规范。
Shui Xiao, which is swinging long white silk sleeves, is a highly symbolic and highly expressive action in Kunqu acting. And after the move was standardized in Kunqu, it began to appear in other opera forms. In the early years of Kunqu highlights, performers even came up with different styles of sleeve swinging, each quite different from the other, each conveying different feelings and moods required by the role. Swinging sleeves became a skill regarded as essential for every performer. The way Kunqu is performed is closely related to the stage on which it is performed. Although the numerous stages seen in cities and in the countryside may differ in terms of size and exterior appearance, they are all square in shape and they open to the audience from 3 sides. This design does provide a wider space for performers, but it limits the use of stage props, and thus it forces the performers to focus on costumes, facial makeup, and, of course, acting. In this highlight from the Peony Pavilion called Park Visit, Zhang Jiqian plays the heroine Lady Du. Using a variety of postures and moves while singing and chanting, she reveals the feelings of the heroine down to the finest detail. The feelings of a young lady from a rich family confined to a boudoir who longs for love and who resents the fact that spring is fast disappearing. In another classical highlight, Desperate Run at Night in the Wilderness, the hero Lin Chong undertakes a hurried journey on his own at night. But the mountain, river and village he passes in the wilderness are shown not through props or backdrops, but through moves and gestures that create a vivid depiction of the journey. A Kunqu performer presents a role through singing, chanting, postures and acrobatic moves to reveal the inner feelings of the character and thus tell the story. Among opera singers, there is a saying, the most challenging role for a male actor is that of Lin Chong in A Desperate Run at Night in the Wilderness. This is because it requires the highest skills in every regard.
这个对象非常耐琢磨，就像我们看拿到一个瓷器，它很素，你打眼一看它没什么特殊的东西，但是你如果静下心来，慢慢的品味、咀嚼，来探求，来感受它中间的蕴含的时候，你就会越悟越多。昆曲就是这么一种东西。
Through the presentation of highlights refined over and over again, Kunqu evolved into a theatrical form incorporating singing, dancing and chanting. At the beginning of the last century, opera theorist Qi Rushan summed up the features of Chinese opera genres when he wrote, "No sound is uttered without singing, and no move is executed without dancing." In the way Kunqu brings singing and dancing together, Kunqu goes far beyond any other form. Born out of traditional Chinese culture, Kunqu emphasizes a spiritual portrayal, much as in traditional Chinese painting. In theory, Kunqu shares many similarities with Chinese painting, through a physical approach to a spiritual portrayal, with the latter as the objective. Here, the physical approach means a sketchy and brief illustration.
那中国呢是由各个单项逐渐综合，最后成为戏曲的时候，就是唱念做舞什么都有。
这些艺术因素发展到明清时期，都已经非常成熟了，而他们都被昆曲吸收到自己的机体里，把它们综合起来表现在舞台上，展示在舞台上。
Kunqu is a spiritual treasure of the Chinese people passed down from their ancestors. It is highly national and cultural, but it is also a shining gem in the cultural archives of the world, a wealth to be shared by all the world's people.
Kunqu opera is a spiritual treasure of the Chinese people that has been passed down from our ancestors. In its nature, it is very Chinese, yet it is also a gem of world civilization. Because of Kunqu's unique position as the ancestor of all other opera forms in China, it was naturally a first choice for inclusion on UNESCO's list of the world's intangible cultural heritage. In our next episode, we'll discover more about how Kunqu opera nurtured the various other forms of traditional opera in China. Please join us then. And thank you for staying with us on today's New Frontiers. I'm Ji Xiaojun from CCTV International. See you next time.